Baby boomers are getting older, which means the elderly population is getting a lot bigger. Coming up next year, the innovative steps being taken to make sure that seniors are protected against abuse. We'll talk about that with a live guest. All right, welcome back to tonight's feature story, and it focuses on a very important problem, elder abuse. And for some people, the elderly represent easy targets, and the abuse they can suffer can be difficult to spot. An expert guest is here to join me live, but first, Antoine Lewis takes a look at the situation for us.
Wanted to bring you this to brighten up your room a little bit for the spring.
Social worker Brooke Santoro met 82-year-old Mary under upsetting circumstances. Mary was a victim of elder abuse.
We certainly see cases of neglect, financial abuse, to physical abuse, to sexual abuse, and most of our cases have a combination.
Brooke works with the Weinberg Center for Elder Justice. Staff members include social workers, lawyers, medical professionals, and advocates, all working on behalf of abused seniors. It was co-founded by Daniel Reingold in 2005.
These are people whose victimization is hidden away. They're not in a place where there are people checking in on them. They're in their own homes, and usually, in our experience, the perpetrator is the caregiver.
Reingold says that a family member is almost always that perpetrator. The National Council on Aging reports that 1 out of every 10 Americans over the age of 60 are abused each year. That breaks down to about 5 million people annually. While physical abuse is the most common form, financial abuse remains on the rise.
One of the most insidious is what we call the grandparent scam, where the older adult gets a call from a detective claiming that her granddaughter or grandson has been in an accident or is in jail, and money has to be wired, and no, they can't come to the phone because they're in jail or they're being seen by the doctor, or they'll even put a young person on the phone with a disguised voice saying, "Grandma, please send money, I'm in trouble here."
To help identify potential victims, the center has extended its community outreach with training classes for building doormen.
They know when a son or a daughter or a grandchild is abusing an older adult in their building.
As well as training for bank employees.
If all of a sudden the financial habit of an older adult is changing and it's causing concern or curiosity, we've now given those tellers some questions that they can ask, and they could then refer a victim to us.
And in conjunction with the Hebrew Home in the Bronx, the Weinberg Center established the nation's very first elder abuse emergency shelter, a safe haven for seniors who sadly might need one.
Either to protect them immediately from their perpetrator, or to give them a place to go while the law enforcement system went after the perpetrator.
From the Riverdale section of the Bronx, Antoine Lewis, Fox 5 News.
Antoine, thank you very much. Let's continue to talk about this important subject tonight. This is Joy Solomon, Director, Managing Attorney, the Weinberg Center for Elder Justice. Joy, thanks for being here today. You know, we just got a pretty good overview of the problem, and it's quite difficult. I mean, you're talking about 5 million elderly people every year that are affected by this. Why is it so widespread?
Well, you know, Ernie, it's so widespread, 1 out of 10 older adults, because older people have access to money, retirement money, because they have often homes, and sometimes older adults may be vulnerable, and so it leaves them prey to people.
You said money, okay, and greed always plays a role, you know, with so many different problems, and also with the elderly and abuse. And oftentimes, you know, as we heard, it's a caregiver, it's a family member that's really involved here.
That's right, Ernie. And in most cases, it is a family member who is exploiting their parent, or it's a grandparent. And often the reason is because there is access. Right?
Access, yes, easy access. Right, and they're very difficult to report, a lot of these cases, and to prosecute them as well. Very sensitive testimony, right?
That's right, and prosecutions can take a long time, and sometimes the older adult may die before the case is finished. The standard of proof in criminal cases is beyond a reasonable doubt, so it's a high standard.
And you have a lot of experience in that.
Right, and imagine, you know, having to testify against your loved one in court. So it makes criminal prosecutions very difficult.
Okay, so we've seen the problem. It's a difficult problem, obviously, to say the least. But now let's talk about solutions, okay? Because there are things that we can do, put the spotlight on the problem, and raising the awareness, and tell us about some of the different programs.
So the Weinberg Center for Elder Justice for 13 years has been providing short-term shelter for older adults who need shelter. We've done extensive outreach and training, so we're teaching professionals and others who work with older adults about how to recognize elder abuse.
A lot of doormen, for example, right?
Yeah, we're training doormen in New York City because they know everything. They see who comes in and out of buildings, and they know how their residents are.
Yeah, and you were talking about, you know, scams and money, and that's where a lot of the bank employees have to be trained to spot these things and be careful. If someone is listening now, if they're watching us and they say, okay, I think I'm aware of a problem, an abuse problem, what do they do? What do you suggest?
So I think it's important to speak to that older adult if that's possible, to do it safely and with dignity. I often recommend telling that person about your concerns. I'm concerned about things. And certainly they could call Adult Protective Services if they needed to, or all communities have departments for the aging, and they can make some calls there.
And the elderly can also protect themselves too. There are ways to do that, right?
Yes, Ernie. So one of the things I say is make sure that your finances are secure, that you plan in advance, and also that you stay connected to your community. It's really important to do that.
Let's get some good help out there for people who need it. Okay, Joyce Solomon, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Appreciate it.